it's an ongoing tension between belonging, which in our world looks like fitting in. There's a core difference between fitting in and belonging. And I think that's what this is referencing, because at that time, there was also a real big push towards individuality. We were pushing this narrative of like the nuclear family and the individual, cowboy, and like pull yourself up by their bootstraps, American dream, like to emphasize these differences in the people who could do that and the people who couldn't do that. We're ignoring all the systemic influences that determine whether or not somebody can do that and whether somebody can't do that. We're obscuring those things in this narrative, in this mythology we're building about this beautiful past that we want, where everybody is white and male.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, everybody.
Imagine discovering the ultimate power to defeat cosmic evil isn't weapons or warriors. It's love. I'm Space Admiral Kandas.
I'm Space Cadet Shane, second class.
And today we are chatting about A Wrinkle in Time, Madeleine L'Engle's controversial and beloved classic, with our visiting dignitary, sociologist Valerie Friedlander. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you for having me.
Talking to a sociologist about sci-fi is going to be so much fun. So why did you pick this book for us to read?
Gosh, well, this book and this book series in particular has really impacted me on different levels throughout my life. When we were chatting about like, well, what sci-fi book would I pick? There are so many, and I love so many of them. But I think this one, and I say this one, the series of 3 just really hit. I mean, of course, I resonated with Meg in the book because, she's kind of doesn't fit in. She's mousy brown hair, glasses. I felt like I was being described to a certain level. My dad is a scientist. He was a chemical engineer and chemist. And so my mom was not also a scientist, but there were a lot of things that just resonated, and the idea of going on this journey to embrace one's faults and learning that you're not broken and you matter in the world. I think that's one of the things that I love and I look at with sociology is like you're looking at people patterns, these macro people patterns. And then when I became a life coach, looking at the micro person patterns, right? Like looking at the dynamics of patterns within a person. And I feel like Madeleine L'Engle bridges all of that. Like she's sci-fi, but she's also a fable. She's also a parable. She's also, she's so many, she transcends the boundaries of what a particular book genre is supposed to be. And that was one of the things I really loved about listening to this book, was because at the end of the audiobook, or the more recent audiobook, her granddaughter shares about her and about her journey with the book. And I'd never heard that before. And I was like, this is amazing, because it makes it so human, so real, of these things that are so powerful. I mean, I've read that. I can't tell you how many times I've read this book. And I went to I saw the first movie and I saw the second movie, and I read it to my son. This was the first book that I read with my older son. And then we watched the movie and we did a compare and contrast. Like, what was similar? What was different? What did you like? What didn't you like? Like, how did they work together? And then we watched the other movie and did it again. And I think any book that makes you think, that's not just, I'm going to give you all the answers, I'm going to tell you exactly what this means and how it relates to you, it transcends age, it transcends generation. That's why I picked the book, is because it's just so universal and so important for the times that we live in, which could also be said when she wrote it. So.
Well, A Wrinkle in Time was written in 1962. And then we're also going to cover A Wind in the Door and A Swiftly Tilting Planet. A
Mhm.
Wind in the Door was written in 73 and then A Swiftly Tilting Planet in 78. When I was doing the research for this, because I only knew about the first 3 books, when I was doing the research, I discovered that there's also Many Waters, which came out in 86, and An Acceptable Time, which came out in 89. So she wrote this series of 5 stories around the same characters over almost 30 years. And what I love is that they actually grow up throughout the stories. They aren't still children in A Wind in the Door, but we'll talk about that in our next episode when we get to A
Yeah.
Wind in the Door.
Well, and the 3 books are like the main Meg Charles Wallace, mostly Meg Charles Wallace books.
Yeah.
And then the other ones follow the twins, Sandy and Denny's, and like, so there's like so they have an adventure too in time, and it's interesting. That one didn't grab me as much. I read it, but it didn't grab me as much. And then there are a few others that follow their children or them as a family, and so they're not like, she wrote a bunch. And then one of my other favorites of hers is called A Ring of Endless Light, which is about a relative. So it's about, like, I don't know, maybe like a cousin or a niece. I don't remember exactly the relationship. All her characters kind of intertwine. And that one is about a girl who has this powerful interaction with dolphins. That one is amazing. I don't remember thinking of it as sci-fi as much as like young, growing, coming of age kind of book. But that book I actually read and decided to be a marine biologist. And then I took biology in high school and went, yeah, I'm not going to be a marine biologist.
Oh, that is so funny. I don't think we ever end up being what we think we're going to be when we're kids, except for our daughter. Our daughter knew she was going to be a paleontologist from the time she was 4 years old, and she is a paleontologist.
It's amazing.
Some people, the rest of us, though, the rest of us don't. You wanted to talk about how A Wrinkle in Time, the 2 themes around A Wrinkle in Time that you wanted to talk about were the authoritarianism, the attraction of authoritarianism, and the importance of love and the value of all your weird imperfections. So let's dig into authoritarianism first, and then this self-love, because I think we can wrap it up with a nice little bow in a happier way after we're done with the authoritarianism piece.
Yeah.
And
I'm
that's
like, actually, could we not talk about that?
well, it's such a
In real
heavy,
time?
it's such a heavy theme for a children's book.
Yeah.
And this book has been banned. Oh my gosh. I was trying to figure out why it's been banned, and then I did a little research, and it's a really silly reason why this book was banned. We can
Yeah.
talk about that too. Let's talk about authoritarianism. the authoritarianism in the book first.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there are so many branches, because I talked to my sister recently, and she's like, she couldn't remember the book as well, and was talking to a friend about it, and her friend is an atheist and really kind of had issues with the book and some of the uh, religious overtones in the book, or undertones. I don't know what the difference is, overtone and
There's
undertone,
overt
but
religion in the book.
there's a lot of that. But as I was listening to it and thinking about that, I was also thinking about how we communicate. I know this isn't authoritarianism, but it kind of relates in that how we communicate. You have these witches, which and who, and
What's it?
what's it, and the way that they communicate has to do with what we understand. Like that's a core component of communication, is that I'm going to communicate with you in the what I understand. But if I'm actually going to reach you, you also need to understand what I'm saying. And so we use symbols to communicate. So I understand this symbol, or I know you understand this symbol. And so I'm going to speak to you in a way that will connect, even if it's not the words I would use, or maybe it's not exact, but it hits the notes that are meaningful to your understanding of the world. I have been thinking a lot about like how we use words, and this is of course sociology component, is like words as symbols. I grew up with words being symbols. A lot of times people think of words just as like we make a lot of assumptions about words. I think I consider myself a word nerd. I love looking at a word and going, what does this mean? What does this mean in the dictionary? But what does it mean when you use it? And what does it mean when I use it? And is it what we mean it to mean? Are we understanding this the same way? So in my podcast, I'll break down word. Like, I'm going to use this word that lots of people are using. Let's talk about what it means before we even use it. And I think that's one of the things that is prevalent in this book is when we talk about quotes or phrases, what does that mean to you? What is the overt meaning and what is the underlying meaning? And my dad was very much in the mode of using analogies and stories to help give a concept. And so I took that on as well because I'm like, we need a context. So I see a lot of the stuff that they're using as like these ways of explaining things and understanding that there are different ways of explaining things and what the heart of it is what really matters. How that ties into authoritarianism is you don't get that in authoritarianism. It is only this way. Everything only means this thing that I told you that it means. And it's very rigid and inflexible. If you think about Camazotz, it's this world where everybody does the same thing. And there's one thing, it telling everybody how to function, almost like puppets, almost just like they just move. Even if they start to think something different or start to do something different, there's a fear. Like, so you think about when they go onto the planet and there's this, everybody's all the kids are bouncing their balls at the same time. And there's one kid who doesn't go in with the other kids. And the mom is totally freaked out. Like, you know that she's not mind controlled the way Charles Wallace is later, but she knows how you're supposed to behave. And she knows what you're supposed to say and what you're not supposed to say. And except you can't hide when somebody's different in this world. And we live in this world that's they call it shadowed. And I think of it like, you know what you're supposed to say. A lot of people will intentionally break what you're supposed to say. But if you think in the school systems, this is how you're supposed to behave. And yes, we've made some advances we have IEPs and 504s and ways that we are supporting the kids better in their differences in the school system. But the system itself, and this is not to say anything about teachers, or I think everybody should have access to free public education. I'm a big advocate of teachers and public schools. And I think you can advocate for something and question how it's being done, question the system, not the people, the system that it's functioning in. And the system is designed for factories. It is designed to be producing like Camazotz produces. And I forget what the thing is, like they have the machine, the person that they run into in the central intelligence, who is the person who runs the spelling grade
Oh, yeah.
uh
The machine that,
one or
yeah,
whatever. He's like,
yeah.
I run the machine of spelling grade, so it's like, is he a teach?
Yeah.
And what is the machine? So, so we have the pieces of those, like we're kind of almost like fighting against it, but the trappings are all there to like the factory.
Mm-hmm. I remember attending an assembly at my daughter's middle school, and every single kid sat on the floor and they were lined up in these perfect little rows. And I thought, oh, this is like a prison. This school is like a prison. And I didn't like it at all, because I don't remember school being like that when I was a kid.
You hear people my age or even younger millennials, whatever. Oh, we need to pitch shop back in class. We need to do this. We need to do that. You need to do that. I'm going, well, where's the money? No, we can't have. Well, they got to make do. And in our society, we're this. What year was this book written?
1962. So,
So
before any of us in this room were born.
So this is post Korean War. This is post World War II and Korean War. This is where the nuclear family is starting to be developed.
This is 3 years before Vietnam.
So you have to when we look at books, and we have to look at the author, and when we look at the author, we have to look at the time period they're in. And what usually authors do is they look back at their personal experience, which is probably about 20, maybe 30 years. And then what they perceive as what the future would be in 20, 30, maybe 50, or maybe 100 years. And you have to perceive what they were educated from. If you go back to 1963, you will go back to segregation. You will go back to diseases. Breast cancer was a death knell. So you have to put all the where this author's head's at in all this. And she saw the authoritarian or the it as what was coming up. She was seeing reflections from the USSR. And then she was seeing how science was starting to go into space. So you have all these things, and the authoritarian never leaves us. I think that's what we make the biggest mistake, is we make the biggest mistake thinking something evil is being beaten, and it never is beaten. And we have this illusion that basically, oh, it's our generations that's going to see the second coming, Not, kind of thing. We live in the times of times and kind of thing, and we don't. All we are is basically is another sand pebble in this constant of time. So it's interesting how you put this book, because I looked at it one way because I'm a male, all right. And I thought Calvin was freaking awesome. He's my guy. He's my Luke Skywalker.
And Calvin is awesome. Let's just,
right?
Yeah.
He is the dude, the redheaded basketball player, goofy all the time. It was just like, yeah, that's my guy. That's the guy we're gonna go with. But the female character, what's her name?
Meg.
She was again battling with herself, and in the end, the witches, or I don't want to say witches, but the billion sun entities, Calvin and her dad were all coming to the same conclusion that basically, no, Meg, you're going to have to go in the dark cave yourself and face Darth Vader. You see, we're at that same story again. All right. And basically the it is almost, her reflection kind of thing. And the thing is that no, what defeats this is love. Love for your fellow man, love for your brother, and most especially love for yourself, kind of thing. She was, you got to feel a female writer in the 60s when you can imagine they were getting paid what, half, kind of thing.
If
they were working at all. And so the authoritarian to the writer is man, is basically capitalism. I don't want to go capitalism, but was basically the American hierarchy, what we have today. It was preventing her, and the only way you can go through this as an artist, you always, it's the gatekeepers. It's always the gatekeepers you get through. Always the gatekeepers. So you can look at it as a gatekeeper. All right, let's have all the songs the same way, because that way they sell. Let's have all this the same way. Let's have all the books. We're going to have all the books. Okay, you're going to have the beginning, we're going to have the middle, and we're going to have the end. We're going to have this. All right, and it's forgettable. You forget about it. What things do remain? What things you remember generation after generation after eons is the ones that do not follow the rules. The song that's out of tune, the Neil Young, the Willie Nelson. Okay, if you ever hear these guys sing and play, it's just like, that's not supposed to make sense. All right, but and I'm going to bring it back to cursive writing. Is that because of basically, if you look at people's handwriting or whatever, all right, it tells a story about them. And the poetry they write. I see kids write today, and it's just like, it's like caveman on a wall because they lack the poetry in it. And that's when people go, oh, we need more shop classes. We need more this, and we need more that. What they're talking about is poetry. Literally. Woodworking is poetry. Metal making is poetry. Even home ec is a style by itself. It's that individuality, all right? And then the authoritarian is, like you said, bounce the balls at the same time. Let's all, dress all at the same time. And I used to tell my employees this: if everybody's wearing a green shirt and you're wearing a red shirt, sooner or later you're going to wear a green shirt. All right. Because you're going to want to fall in. You want to be part of the freaking group.
You
Just
can
'cause
see
it's
the sociologist is ready to say something about that.
it's yeah, I know, but it's the natural aspect. That's what you kind of like. Well, then I'll belong, you know. But if you look at the Wrinkle in Time, the wardrobe, the witch in the wardrobe, Firefly, even Star Trek, you have a bunch of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, for God's sakes. You have an island of misfit toys. None of them work right. None of them work as they're designed. And I think where people miss the story or miss the plot is that it was the monster who put the North Star in the tree. Is the one you shunned that put the North Star in the tree. So for her to defeat it, she had to be that Northern Star. She had to be that Rudolph. She had to basically say, yes, I am the goofy misfit, whatever, but I love my brother, right? And I love myself and I love my family. I'll be damned if you're going to take this away from me.
So that brings
And
us to Mrs. Who's It or Mrs. What's It telling
Mrs.
Meg,
What's It? Yeah.
telling Meg that it was her flaws that were her biggest strength.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we have a basic need for belonging. That is a core need. We think about survival. People think about like, I'm going to be more attentive to the danger. Like we have a negative bias is what people will say. And it's not true. We don't have a negative bias. It looks like that. But what it is we are seeking belonging. So we're attuned to what will mean that I don't belong. And that is what we define as negative. So having that attunement of like, I don't belong, I don't fit in is a really key driver. When you were talking about people dressing and at work, I was thinking about my dad. He worked in an office where every day was casual. He was in tech for after chemistry, went into tech, and every day was casual. And he was like, well, that's boring. So I'm going to do dress up Friday. That was so he
Right.
dressed up every Friday. Nobody else dressed up on Fridays, but my dad did dress up Fridays. So he wore a suit and tie on Fridays because usually it's casual Fridays. But when every day is casual, we got to shake it up.
Right.
But so there are a lot of things that I'm thinking about when we talk about like what it is and this idea that so many aspects of this book, I think it's important to look at what time period somebody was writing in, but the way she describes what she experienced, I do think that there is an experience of a message coming through somebody. And I see this on individual levels, and this taps into the various, there's an underlying spiritual as well as scientific core to what she's writing about. And she did originally have like specific notes towards events and dictators and things like that, and those came out. And I think there's an intentionality around that because when we want to be true to a message, like what are we trying to say here? And throughout all of these, it's an ongoing tension between belonging, which in our world looks like fitting in. There's a core difference between fitting in and belonging. And I think that's what this is referencing, because at that time, there was also a real big push towards individuality. We were pushing this narrative of like the nuclear family and the individual, cowboy and like pull yourself up by their bootstraps, American dream, like to emphasize these differences in the people who could do that and the people who couldn't do that. We're ignoring all the systemic influences that determine whether or not somebody can do that and whether somebody can't do that. We're obscuring those things in this narrative, in this mythology we're building about this beautiful past that we want, that where everybody is white and male.
No, I mean you're right. I mean everybody's a cowboy, everybody's a
cowboy,
pioneer,
all that stuff. So
all
we're
this stuff,
all that. But the individualism is something that stood out to me, but then she engages it because, there is a nuance between this like we have individualism versus authoritarianism, and it looks like this binary. So either you're an individual and you don't care what anybody else thinks, and you're going to go your own way and you're going to do your own thing and you're not going to join the crowd. And then you have the authoritarian where everybody does the same thing and everybody moves the same way and everybody follows the rules and stuff. And so we're like, oh, this standard juxtaposition at that time, right? It's either communism or capitalism and democracy, except it's not that clear cut. People keep trying to put it into this clear cut picture. It's not
put anything. You can't. There's no X and Y. There is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, you have a whole alphabet. You can't just focus on two of the letters.
Exactly. And so it looks like she's doing this binary, but then she draws in the what is it? I wrote it down. That equal is not the same as alike. You know, that these ideas that so really what she's pulling at is the nuance between belonging and fitting in, right? What is it? Because we know that collectivism, working together, caring for each other, supporting each other, is important. It's not, we are over individualized at this point. So we know that binary is damaging, it's harmful. So what does collectivism look like? And it looks like the difference between fitting in, which authoritarianism likes, which can look like being an individual because we're isolated from each other and we are only me and mine, versus love and belonging and embracing difference and saying, I am different, I'm unique, and you're different and you're unique, and I love you. I love you for all the things that you are. And at the end of the book, they don't solve Camazotz. They don't solve Earth.
No, they don't.
Right?
They don't.
And the later books, they don't solve them either. And so to your point about like, it is an ongoing struggle. It is an ongoing journey of self-learning to accept in this society that we live in, to accept yourself, and by accepting yourself to be able to accept somebody else.
Well, there's really,
for that.
in an infinite timeline, there's no way to solve anything because there's always going to be something new that comes into the equation. I want to go back just a little bit because Shane identified with Calvin. Valerie identifies with Meg. I identified with the twins. I think that I'm the person that's always on the outside, the supporting cast member in these books. I never identified as the heroine or the hero of the story. I always identified as the person off to the side that's kind of supporting the endeavor. You know, I wouldn't be Frodo. I would be, what's Frodo's friend? Who actually was the hero? Sam.
Sean Astin's
Sam.
character.
Sam.
Sam.
Actually, Sam is the hero of the Sam is the hero of Lord of the Rings, and he just doesn't get the credit.
I may say Merry and Pippin are a little bit more supporting, even though they got their own journey.
Yeah,
but then again, but okay. First of all, I've known this woman for 28 years now. Okay, so I've heard everything about her high school scenarios. Right, so you were the stage maker. That's what you constantly tell me. That's what you do. Okay. So, but I'm the artist that charged 5 cents to dance on stage for my brothers and sisters.
And I would have been the one who set up the stage for him so he could do that.
Exactly. So, but the thing is, this book was pretty much like, and I think this is really what it's trying to get at, is that even me today, I just want to sit back and coast. All right. Life doesn't work that way. It never does. But what the authority and what we have now today in our country, mostly in our country, is that cookie cutter. If you just do this, you'll do this. If you do this, you just get this. All right. And it doesn't work that way. It never worked that way. That was a lie. It's always a lie because that's how they make money. That's how they literally make money. That's the religious people. I mean, 700 Club. I grew up in Michigan, and 700 Club was big here. Plus, there was another guy. second coming kind of thing. Give me your money, your prayers, and this, that, and the other thing. And the thing is, these poor people, it's like, didn't you I know you heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Well, guess where they found them? In a freaking cave because they thought the end of the world was coming.
Yeah.
All right.
And that was
the
2,000 years ago.
yeah. So this notion, this literally notion that basically they can, and they can, and they do have their perfect subdivisions with their perfect lawn and this and their homeowners associations that will come after you, and so on. And I really think that that's where this idea of basically of that's the perfect Leave It to Beaver scenario, not knowing, because I grew up in the scenario. I grew up in the 70s. And as soon as those kids moved out, as soon as those kids went off to do something else and mom was home alone and had nothing to do, on our street, it was like a domino effect. All right. They were all caught with their secretaries. One divorce after another one divorce, one good Catholic family after another good Catholic family. It went down like freaking, like a house of cards, because that's what it was built on, a house of an illusion kind of thing. So the thing is that what we have a society of one America, because we live in West Michigan, and Big Bad Detroit. That's all years, Big Bad Detroit, or Chicago.
I'm in Chicago.
Valerie lives in Chicago.
I'm in Chicago.
Well, okay, it's scary to them, and it's just like, yeah, it should be freaking scary because you never went there. It's new.
Right.
Go have some fun. And the thing is, with large cities, with large scenarios like that, is that you have so much going on. You have so many different people. You have so many arts and this and that and the other thing. Guess what? Wearing a red shirt doesn't matter. You can be as different as you want, and nobody will care or look another way. But if you go out in the country, in the rural area, you're chastised. You're drowned out. All right. You're pointed at. All right. You're going to be either a kicker, or you're going to be this, or you're going to be that. All right. Which leads to basically depression, which leads to a lot of bad things, because you're holding the root down. You're holding the plant down underneath concrete. And so, yeah, they're going to ban this book. Why would you want to tell a young person, because this is a young person book, why would you want to tell a young person that basically, you can defeat the lion kind of thing? And as for the atheist, kind of like going, oh, I don't like it because I'm an atheist. But I also understand that basically that philosophy, like Jesus's words or whatever in scripture and stuff like that, if you read that stuff and you're going, hell yeah, I'm good with that shit. Because it's so closely related to the Buddha and other philosophers and this and other thing, and they all have one freaking thing, is that basically the golden rule. You treat somebody else like you would treat yourself. End of story.
That one
Okay?
actually has a lot of issue, though, because you want to treat people the way they want to be treated, not just
Right.
the way you would want, because that's how we get into this. We get caught up in this idea that, like, I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated, and then I expect you to behave the way I would behave were I to be treated that way. And when you don't behave that way, then something is wrong, and something's wrong with you. And then, the
What
love
book is
isn't
that out
there,
of?
right?
That's the platinum rule.
It's been
platinum
labeled.
rule.
I don't know who labeled it the platinum rule, but like
I read that. It was in a book we recently did, and it was just like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But that's the thing with so much of what she's looking at is like truths, right? Like all of these sorts of like these deeper truths. And yeah, to give a young person the power of truth, of like, you are powerful just as you are. With everything that you are powerful, and you matter in the world. And even if other people don't see it, it's true. And to say that to someone and say, like, it's going to be like, you need to be true to you, because if one person does that, it gives other people permission to do that. And it might not give them permission right now when it's uncomfortable and it's painful for you, but it will It will, because people will know, because that house of cards, it's almost like, we'll move from House of Cards to Jenga, right? Like, because
Right.
it doesn't fall as fast as a house of cards, but it does fall because you start pulling out the bricks and you start building something new with the bricks. And then eventually that Jenga tower is going to fall over. And so it's dangerous to the illusion of control that authoritarianism relies on, to say, no, I'm not gonna do the thing that I usually do or that everybody usually does. But to do that, you also have to confront the various layers of trauma that we have from living in a society that tells us that we are worthless if we don't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And those layers of trauma make it very challenging to do that. So doing that work is really critical. But this book tells you that you can, and it matters.
Yeah.
And there are people out there who will embrace you even if you can't see them, and they're just a shimmer out there. You know that they love you, even if they're just a shimmer right now.
I mean, we're literally back to the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every story ever written is the hero's journey. It's just written in 8 billion different ways.
Yeah, from just personal experience with my own father. It's kind of like a dual messed up man. All right. He taught me how to use a hammer, make a living, and materials around. But he also had this my way or the highway or the Hispanic. It was still there. It was still there. And I'll never
Culturally,
forget,
the patriarchy was entrenched in his thought process.
Yeah. And the thing is, it took me a long time to figure it out. Let's put it this way. Figure out that I had the right as much as, Meg did.
Other thing I'll add into just real quick is the additional, like, that idea of respecting your parents. This book is that coming of age disillusionment with a parent. Like, oh, I'm supposed to follow, like, Meg never really had the space where it was like, you have to do what your parent says.
Right.
But she did have this idolization of her father, and going through this, oh, he's just a human being. And now I'm angry because you were supposed to fix it. And I wasn't supposed to have to do anything because you were supposed to take care of me. And that's like also a disillusionment with the patriarchy, to be like, because it wasn't her mom who was going to fix things. It was her dad who was going to fix things. And so this, like, oh, you aren't. But then that sudden, like, calm that comes over her and goes, no, this is for me to do. You did everything you were supposed to do as best you could because you're a human being and you're my father and I love you. And it's okay that you couldn't fix it because this is my part to play. And that ownership of her power, going back to that. But like that, I remember going through that. I idolized my parents in a lot of ways. That awareness of, oh no, you are very flawed human beings. And you've also done you've had a life. You have gone through a journey where, you have fought against these things that you were conditioned with, and you've laid the foundation for me to now do my own fight against the darkness. And I can love you for that. And I don't have to be illusioned with you being some perfect person that you're not. And that's another piece that was really, really powerful.
I wanna touch on something real quick because you remind me of something. Tessering. Is it tessering? I
Tessering.
love how it's kind of, this one reminds me. I've noticed this between female writers and male writers. Male writers try to go way too technical. They want to describe the engine. In other words, this is the car and it has a 354 barrel in it and yada. Where basically female writers will go, okay, yeah, tessering. This is what we do, and this is
We're
what's going
bending
to happen.
space and time.
And space and time, boom, done. And I think that's really good. I think that's basically because you can get so wrapped up into how things work and the detail. You can lose yourself, and you can lose a story. And also, it gives the authority the ability to challenge it. It's kind of like the book is kind of like a feather or something, like it just,
That's art. right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
idea with art
yeah.
is you give people enough room because the relationship of art, there's the artist who creates
Right.
it, but then there's the people who observe it, who consume it, who are impacted by it. And that's not something the artist can control.
Mm-hmm.
That's their experience. It's a conversation between the people who observe the art and the person who created the
Right.
art and the art itself. And
Right.
that's true with like all these different things. And it did say in the afterward, her granddaughter said that she had a lot more details about
Yeah.
things, and those
Yeah.
things came out. And I think that again, that goes back to that idea of purpose. What is the purpose? What am I trying to say? And that reflectiveness of like, do I need to explain all this stuff, or does it
Mm-hmm.
distract from what really matters? And I think that, I mean, again, as a life coach, that's something that I often will look at is like, what are these extraneous things that are pulling us away, that are keeping us from really paying attention to what actually matters? Because that's what authoritarian thrives on.
Mm-hmm.
Authoritarianism thrives on our distraction, our busyness, our all the, because then we're much more likely not to question. We're much more
Mm-hmm.
likely to do the thing that's placed in front of us to do. We're much more likely to shop at the store that's most convenient. We're going to follow convenience and we're going to follow security. And Madeleine L'Engle eschewed the idea of security, that really what we needed was love, not security. And the more focused we are on security,
Yeah.
the more we are likely to fall into line, and then you don't have art. And that's, we could talk a whole lot. One of the things you said when we were talking about art is like, I was thinking AI and how
Right.
everybody's language is starting to sound the same because everybody is using AI. So all the writing is
Yeah.
starting to
Yeah.
sound the
Yeah.
same.
One more thing is that as an artist, I mix a lot of colors and I sell a lot of work and I go to market. I'm still amazed. It's kind of, I feel like Elton John when he said sometimes he goes, I have no idea why they like this music. Right. Because he's the artist. And that's the same thing with me. It's just like, I have no idea why they keep on buying this piece. I don't see it. I don't see it. And the thing about artists or artistic stuff that conquers authority is that it's not color per se. It's not yellow because the authority will go, oh, that's yellow, that's blue, and that's that. And you can't mix them together. What the artist does is that, well, we're going to mix that and that together. And we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this and do this and do this and do this. And what it does is it pulls on the imagination. It pulls on those strings, like you said. And even when I'm working on pieces, all right, because it's going through my head, the movie's going in my head and it's moving. It's always moving. So trying to capture a moving like the wind kind of thing is kind of difficult at times. But there's also where I will do pieces and I'm going, why complete the story? That's not my job. That's their job. Every time you look at this piece, every time you read this piece of art or hear this piece of art, as you travel through time and your ages, you will see it completely different as it goes.
And
All
that
right.
is how the creativity expands.
Yes.
We want to create something that allows that expansion. Not if we're creating something that is like rigid and boxed and, doesn't have that bit to it, like that's the idea with art, is that expands creativity,
Mm-hmm.
not just for the person who's in it, but the person who's receiving it. It expands
Right.
their creativity too. Whether it inspires them to create art or whether it inspires them just to think differently, that is also a form of art.
You can get lost in the details really fast. You can get,
Yes.
I mean, and the more that the book or the story is more fluid, the more that basically you'll stick around for generations after generation after generation. You're not dealing with technical BS. You're dealing with human stories. You could take the same story, change the stage, and you could go back 200 years, 300 years, 5,000 years, or you can go 5,000 years in the future.
Valerie, I want to give you an opportunity to share with the community about your business and how to get a hold of you.
I work with a lot of women in particular who are looking at stepping outside of the boxes that they've internalized, all of the rules that tell us how we're supposed to be in the world. And a lot of times they're in a career transition and they recognize that that career transition is hitting on something deeper in them. And so they want not just the idea of like, what am I doing next, but who am I now? as I shift and do something different? And what are the ripple effects of how that impacts how I do life in all of my little habits and patterns and all of that sort of stuff. And you can find me at valeriefriedlander.com. I also have a podcast called Mindset Unlimited where I talk about a lot of different concepts along these lines. So you can find that on any of your favorite listening platforms.
And those links will be in the show notes, y'all. All right, that's a wrap on our conversation about A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Next time, we will be talking with Valerie again about A Wind in the Door, which is the sequel, which takes place about 8 years into the future after A Wrinkle in Time. I've been Space Admiral Kandas.
I'm Space Cadet Shane, second class.
And I'm Valerie Friedlander.
And you have been listening to Sci-Fi Book Pod.